The baby was dying, and there was absolutely nothing anyone could do about it. In the heart of Kiowa Territory, 1875 Oklahoma, Chief Tatanka knelt beside his 3-week-old son and watched him struggle for every single breath. Each tiny gasp sounded like it might be the last. The infant's mother had already died bringing him into this world. Now it looked like the child would follow her straight into the spirit realm. But what happened next would change everything. Tatanka was a man who'd faced enemy warriors without flinching. He'd led his people through winters so brutal that even wolves retreated to their dens. But watching his son fight for air? That destroyed him in ways no battle ever could. "He grows weaker," Makpia, the tribe's medicine man, said quietly. The old healer had tried everything: sage smoke, healing chants, poultices made from plants gathered under the full moon. Nothing worked. "The spirits are calling him home to his mother." "No!" Tatanka's voice was raw. "There must be something." That's when Makpia said the unthinkable. "Perhaps the white man's medicine." The words hung in the air like poison. The white men who were killing their buffalo, driving them from their lands, stealing everything that mattered. Trust them with his son's life? But Makpia wasn't finished. 3 days north, near Fort Sill, there's a settlement. Whispers speak of a white woman there, a healer with knowledge different from ours. Medicines that work in ways we don't understand. Tatanka looked down at his son. That irregular rise and fall of that impossibly tiny chest. Pride battled love in his heart. Love won. "I'll bring her here," he declared. "If she can save my son, nothing else matters." "The soldiers won't let her go willingly," Makpia warned. Tatanka's expression hardened. "Then I won't ask." 3 days later, Dr. Sarah Mitchell was working late in her small clinic when her door exploded open. 6 Kiowa warriors filled her space instantly. Muscular, painted, terrifying. But it was the man who entered last who stole every bit of air from her lungs. He was perhaps 6 feet tall, shoulders so broad he had to duck through the doorway. His face was breathtaking, strong jaw, high cheekbones, eyes so dark and intense they seemed to pierce straight through her soul. He wore authority like other men wore clothes. "You are the healing woman," he said in clear English, though heavily accented. Not a question, a statement. Sarah's mind raced. She could scream, but that would get someone killed. She could run, but 6 warriors blocked every exit. So instead, she lifted her chin and met his gaze directly. "I am Dr. Sarah Mitchell, and you're trespassing." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. "My son is dying. You will come with me and save him." "I don't respond well to commands," Sarah shot back, her voice steadier than she felt. "Especially from men who break into my clinic in the middle of the night. If you want my help, try asking like a civilized person." One warrior growled something and stepped forward. But the chief raised one hand and the man froze immediately. The chief studied her for a long moment, and Sarah found herself unable to look away from those penetrating eyes. She saw grief there beneath the pride. Deep, raw grief mixed with desperate hope. "My son cannot breathe properly." His voice had changed now, softer, almost vulnerable. "He is 3 weeks old. His mother died birthing him. Our medicine man has tried everything. If you do not help him, he will die." He paused. And when he spoke again, each word seemed to cost him something. "Please, I am begging you to save my child." Sarah's heart twisted. She thought of all the reasons to refuse, the danger, the scandal, the fact that helping him could be seen as treason by Fort Sill's soldiers. But then she thought of a baby struggling to breathe. The decision was already made. "I'll need my medical bag," she said quietly, "and supplies. If your son has respiratory distress, I'll need specific medicines." Relief washed over the chief's features so clearly that Sarah realized he'd expected her to refuse. "Take what you need. We must hurry." But Sarah had no idea what she was really agreeing to. As she gathered her supplies, stethoscope, tinctures, powders, clean bandages, eucalyptus oil, peppermint extract, digitalis, she asked the critical question. "How long is the journey?" 3 days on horseback. Sarah's eyes widened. 3 days? Your son might not have 3 days if his condition is as serious as you describe. Then we ride fast and stop little. He gestured to a warrior who brought forward buckskin clothing. You cannot ride in that dress. Put these on. Heat rose to Sarah's cheeks. I'll need privacy. We wait outside. But be quick. Every moment matters. Alone again, Sarah's hands trembled as she changed. What was she doing? Willingly going into Kiowa territory, away from all protection, to treat the son of a man who'd essentially kidnapped her? It was complete madness. But she thought of that baby struggling to breathe, and she knew she couldn't make any other choice. When she emerged in the buckskin clothing, the chief's eyes swept over her quickly, then away, but not before she caught a flash of something in his expression she couldn't identify. Can you ride? He asked. Yes. Though she was far from expert, he helped her mount with surprising gentleness, his strong hands steadying her. She tried to ignore the jolt of awareness that ran through her at his touch. Then they were moving, leaving civilization behind as they rode into darkness. Sarah looked back once. The lights faded into the distance. She wondered if she'd ever see them again. They rode brutally hard through the night. Tatanka. She'd learned his name during one brief stop, stayed close, occasionally asking if she needed rest. His concern was evident, despite the urgency driving them forward. When dawn broke across the Oklahoma plains on the third day, Sarah found herself seeing a savage beauty in this wild land she'd never fully appreciated before. They reached the Kiowa encampment as the sun climbed toward its peak. Sarah was exhausted, every muscle screaming, but she pushed aside her discomfort the moment she saw the teepee Tatanka led her toward. Inside, sage smoke hung thick in the air. An elderly man sat beside a small bundle, chanting softly. Sarah's medical training took over immediately. She knelt beside the baby and gently unwrapped the deerskin covering. The infant was tiny, his skin bearing the warm bronze tone of his father's people. His little face was scrunched in distress as he struggled for every breath. Each inhalation came with a rattling sound that made her heart clench. "How long has he been breathing like this?" she asked, pressing her stethoscope to the baby's chest. "Since birth," Tatanka replied, hovering close. "It has grown worse these past days." Sarah listened carefully, moving the stethoscope across the tiny chest. The baby's lungs were congested, fluid accumulating where only air should be. Not uncommon in newborns, but this case was severe, likely complicated by whatever trauma had occurred during the difficult birth that took his mother's life. "His lungs are filled with fluid," Sarah explained, looking up at Tatanka. "The medical term is respiratory distress. The fluid prevents his lungs from expanding properly, which is why each breath is so difficult." "Can you heal him?" The vulnerability in Tatanka's voice struck her deeply. This powerful chief who commanded warriors and led his people was utterly helpless before his son's illness. "I can try," Sarah said honestly. "But I need to work without interruption, and I need your trust. Some of what I do may look strange to you, but you must let me proceed." Tatanka nodded, then spoke rapidly in Kiowa to the elderly medicine man. Makpia studied Sarah for a long moment, his ancient eyes seeming to peer into her soul. Then he nodded slowly and moved back. Sarah worked quickly, her hands steady despite exhaustion. First, she prepared a steam treatment, boiling water, adding eucalyptus oil, positioning the baby to breathe the medicated vapors. The infant coughed weakly. Gradually, his breathing eased slightly. Next came percussion therapy. She carefully tapped on his back and chest to help loosen the fluid in his lungs. "What are you doing?" Tatanka asked, watching her hands move across his son's tiny body. "Helping the fluid break up and drain," Sarah explained softly. "Sometimes babies need assistance clearing their airways. In hospitals back east, we have machines that help. Here, we must do it by hand." She worked for hours, alternating between steam treatments, percussion therapy, and administering small doses of medicine to reduce inflammation and ease breathing. She showed Tatanka how to hold his son upright, explaining that gravity would help drain the fluid. Throughout it all, she was intensely aware of his presence. His desperate focus on every move she made. His raw hope that she could save his child. As evening approached, something remarkable happened. The baby's breathing had improved noticeably. The rattling sound had diminished. His chest rose and fell more regularly. Sarah prepared a tincture for administration every few hours throughout the night. "He's not out of danger yet," she warned, looking up at Tatanka. "The next few days are critical. He needs constant care, steam treatments every 4 hours, medicine every 3, and someone needs to keep him upright as much as possible. If the fluid returns, it could be worse than before. Then you will stay." Not a question, but there was a note of request in his voice that hadn't been there before. "Please stay until my son is well." Sarah met his gaze, seeing naked emotion there. In 3 days of hard riding, she'd seen this man's strength, his leadership, his fierce love for his child. She'd also seen glimpses of something else, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, the gentle care he'd taken to ensure she had water and food during their brief stops. The respect in his voice when he spoke to her now. "I'll stay," she agreed quietly. "But you should know my disappearance will have been noticed. The soldiers at Fort Sill will be looking for me." "Let them look," Tatanka replied, though concern flickered across his face. "My people will keep watch. We'll see them long before they see us." A woman appeared at the teepee entrance, middle-aged, kind-faced. Tatanka spoke to her in Kiowa, and she nodded, gesturing for Sarah to follow. "Winona will show you where you can rest," he explained. "You have traveled far and worked hard. My son sleeps more peacefully than he has since birth. You need rest too." Sarah wanted to protest that she should stay near the baby, but exhaustion was pulling at her like an undertow. "Wake me in 3 hours for his next treatment," she instructed. But that's not what happened. Sarah woke to someone gently shaking her shoulder. Opening her eyes, she found Tatanka crouched beside her, his face illuminated by dim, early morning light. "It is time for his treatment," he said softly. "And thank you for sleeping. I mean, you needed rest." Sarah sat up quickly, pushing loose hair back from her face. She hadn't realized Tatanka had let her sleep longer than 3 hours. It was nearly dawn now. "I told you to wake me. What if he—" "I gave him the medicine," Tatanka interrupted, and there was almost a smile on his lips. "You showed me how much. I remembered. He is breathing well, but I thought you should see for yourself." In his teepee, Sarah examined the baby again. Relief washed through her as she confirmed his condition had indeed improved overnight. The fluid was draining, his breathing more stable. As she worked, she became aware of Tatanka watching her with an intensity that made her skin warm. "You are not what I expected," he said suddenly. Sarah glanced at him. "What did you expect?" "Someone afraid. Someone who would see only a savage when she looked at me." He paused. "Someone who would not care whether my son lived or died because his blood is Kiowa." "I see a baby who needs help," Sarah replied, tucking the infant back into his wrappings. "And a father who loves his son. The color of your skin or mine doesn't change either of those things." Something shifted in Tatanka's expression, a warmth entering his eyes that made Sarah's breath catch. "You are unusual among your people, so I've been told." She managed a small smile. "Usually not as a compliment." "It is a compliment from me." He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. "Sarah? May I call you Sarah?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. "I am sorry for taking you from your home. I was desperate. But I am not sorry it brought you here to save my son." He hesitated, then added quietly, "And I am not sorry to have met you." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. This was dangerous territory. More dangerous than being in a Kiowa camp far from any white settlement. What she was feeling for this man, this chief who had burst into her life with such force, was impossible. They came from different worlds, worlds that were at war with each other. "Your son is improving," she said, trying to steer back to safer ground. "But he'll need continued care for at least another week. After that. She trailed off, not sure what happened after that. After that, Tatanka said, I will take you home. If that is what you wish. The way he said it, with a note of hope that she might not wish it, made Sarah's pulse race. But before either could say more, everything changed. Over the following days, Sarah fell into a rhythm within the Kiowa camp. She tended to the baby regularly, pleased to see him growing stronger with each passing day. His breathing normalized. The fluid drained completely. He began nursing with vigor. Tatanka named him Kahana, which Winona explained meant swift one, expressing his father's hope the boy would grow fast and strong. But Sarah didn't just treat the baby. An elderly woman with painful joints found relief in a poultice Sarah created. A young warrior with an infected wound was saved from blood poisoning through careful cleaning and proper bandaging. The Kiowa people began to see Sarah not as a captive, but as a healer who'd come to help them. Children followed her curiously. Women smiled and offered her food. Men nodded respectfully when she passed. But it was Tatanka's attention that consumed her thoughts more than she wanted to admit. He came to check on Kahana multiple times each day. But Sarah suspected the baby wasn't his only reason for visiting. They talked about medicine and healing practices, about their different worlds, about loss and hope. Tatanka told her about his wife, a gentlewoman named Camila, who had died bringing their son into the world. Sarah heard the grief that still weighed on him. She told him about her father who'd taught her medicine despite society's disapproval, and how his death had left her alone in a world that didn't quite accept a woman doctor. You are not alone now, Tatanka said one evening as they sat outside his teepee, watching the sun set over the plains. Kahana slept peacefully in his cradleboard nearby, breathing steady and strong. You have brought life to my son. In doing so, you have brought hope back to me. My people see you as a gift. And what do you see me as? Sarah asked softly, already knowing the answer in her heart, but needing to hear him say it. Tatanka turned to face her fully, his dark eyes intense in the fading light. I see you as the woman who saved my son's life. I see you as brave and skilled and compassionate. He paused, reaching out to gently touch her face, his calloused fingers surprisingly tender against her skin. And I see you as someone I could love, if you would let me. Sarah's breath caught. Everything about this was impossible. She was white. He was Kiowa. She came from a world of cities and civilization. He lived in these wild plains following the old ways. Her people and his were enemies in a conflict that showed no signs of ending. And yet, when she looked into his eyes, none of those impossibilities seemed to matter as much as the feeling that bloomed in her chest. This is madness, she whispered. But she didn't pull away from his touch. Perhaps, Tatanka agreed. But I have learned that the heart does not always follow the path of wisdom. Mine has chosen you, Sarah Mitchell, no matter how mad that choice may be. But then came the moment that would force her to choose. Shouting erupted from the edge of camp. Warriors ran toward the commotion. Tatanka was on his feet instantly, hand moving to the knife at his belt. Sarah grabbed Kahana's cradleboard protectively as a young warrior ran up, speaking rapidly in Kiowa. Soldiers, Tatanka translated grimly. A cavalry unit flying a white flag. They say they have come to negotiate for your return. Sarah's stomach dropped. She'd known this moment would come eventually, but now that it had arrived, she realized with startling clarity that she didn't want to go. These past days among the Kiowa had shown her a way of life that, while different from her own, was rich with meaning and community. And Tatanka, the thought of leaving him felt like tearing out a piece of her own heart. You must go to them, Tatanka said, his voice carefully controlled. If you do not, they will attack. They will say we hold you captive, that we have harmed you. Blood will be spilled. But I don't want, Sarah started, then stopped, seeing the pain in his eyes that mirrored her own. Come, he said quietly. We will go together. Tatanka gathered several senior warriors, including Makpia, and they rode out to meet the cavalry unit with Sarah. She carried Kahana, the baby now healthy and alert, as evidence of what she'd accomplished here. When they reached the soldiers, Sarah recognized Captain Morrison, the commanding officer at Fort Sill. Dr. Mitchell, Morrison said, relief evident. Thank God you're alive. We feared the worst when you disappeared. I'm fine, Captain, Sarah replied, aware of Tatanka's presence beside her, solid and strong. Chief Tatanka brought me here to treat his infant son who was seriously ill. I came willingly to save the baby's life. Morrison's eyes narrowed skeptically. Willingly? In the middle of the night? Without word to anyone? The situation was urgent, Sarah said firmly. The baby would have died without immediate intervention. I took an oath to heal those in need, regardless of who they are. Nevertheless, you're a white woman alone among hostiles, Morrison argued. It's my duty to bring you back to safety. These people are not hostiles, Captain. They're simply trying to live their lives and care for their families, just as we do. Sarah looked at the baby in her arms, then at Tatanka. I have been treated with nothing but respect here. Chief Tatanka promised to return me safely when I was ready to go. Morrison's voice dropped. And are you ready? This was it. The moment of choice. Sarah could say yes, return to Fort Sill, resume her practice in the settlement, pretend these days had never happened. Or she could choose something else entirely. Something that would scandalize white society, but would fulfill something deep within her soul. She looked at Tatanka, seeing the carefully masked emotion in his eyes. He would let her go if she chose to leave. She knew that. He was too honorable to hold her against her will. But she also saw the hope there. The silent plea that she would stay. Captain Morrison, Sarah said slowly, choosing her words carefully. I appreciate your concern for my welfare. But I have been thinking about my future, and I have decided that my skills as a healer are needed here among the Kiowa people. They have no doctor, no one trained in modern medicine. I can make a real difference here. That's absurd, Morrison sputtered. You can't seriously be considering staying with the Indians. I am not just considering it, Captain. I am deciding it. Sarah's voice grew stronger. I am a free woman capable of making my own choices. I choose to remain here, to continue my work as a healer among people who need my skills. Morrison's face reddened. This is preposterous. You've clearly been influenced. I have been influenced by nothing except my own conscience and my own heart. Sarah interrupted firmly. I am staying of my own free will. If you attempt to take me by force, you will be violating my rights as a citizen, and I will file formal complaints with the territorial government. Beside her, Sarah felt Tatanka's surprise and joy radiating like heat from a fire. He didn't speak, but his hand found hers, their fingers intertwining in a gesture that spoke volumes. Morrison stared at them, his expression cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally resignation. This will cause a scandal, Dr. Mitchell. Your reputation will be destroyed. My reputation among people who never accepted me anyway. Sarah smiled sadly. I can live with that, Captain. What I cannot live with is turning my back on people who need me. Or on, she glanced at Tatanka, on something real and true, just because it defies convention. The captain shook his head slowly. Very well, but this decision is on your head. If you change your mind, you know where to find us. He pulled on his horse's reins, preparing to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Dr. Mitchell, I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, Captain, Sarah replied honestly. So do I. As the cavalry rode away, Tatanka pulled Sarah into his arms, holding her and his son together. You would truly stay? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. You would give up your world for mine? I'm not giving up my world, Sarah said, looking up at him. I'm choosing a new one, a better one. One where I can be a healer without apology. Where I can make a real difference. And where... She touched his face gently. Where I can love a man who sees me for who I truly am. Tatanka kissed her then. A kiss that spoke of promise and passion, and a future they would build together. When they finally pulled apart, Makpia was smiling broadly, and the warriors who'd accompanied them were grinning and speaking animatedly in Kiowa. They say you are a warrior in your own way, Tatanka translated. You fight with medicine instead of weapons, and you are brave enough to follow your heart despite the costs. They approve." He paused, his expression growing serious. "But Sarah, you must understand what this means. If you stay, if you choose to be with me, there will be challenges. My people will eventually accept you, many already have, but there will be those among both our peoples who see our union as wrong." "I know," Sarah said. "But I learned from my father that doing what's right is often more important than doing what's easy. And this, being here, helping your people, being with you, this feels right in a way nothing else ever has." Over the following weeks, Sarah fully integrated into the Kiowa camp. She set up a proper clinic in her own teepee where people came for treatment. She learned Kiowa language while Tatanka improved his English. They spent hours talking about how to bridge their two worlds, discussing which traditions from each culture could coexist harmoniously. Kahana thrived, growing stronger and more alert each day. Sarah took special joy in watching Tatanka with his son, seeing fierce love in every gentle touch, every soft word. The baby became a symbol of what their union could represent. New life born from near tragedy, hope emerging from despair, and the possibility that two different worlds could come together in love rather than conflict. One evening, as autumn began to paint the plains in golds and russets, Tatanka took Sarah to a high bluff overlooking the river. The sunset was spectacular, the sky ablaze with colors that seemed impossible. "Among my people," Tatanka said, "when a man wishes to take a wife, he brings gifts to her family and proves he can provide for her. But you have no family here for me to honor in the traditional way." "I have you," Sarah said softly, "and Kahana, and Winona and Makpia and all the others who have welcomed me. That's family enough." Tatanka reached into a pouch at his belt and withdrew something that caught the dying light, a necklace made of small shells and polished stones, intricately woven together. "I made this for you," he said. "Each stone represents something. The white ones for your healing skill, the blue for your courage, the red for the passion in your heart. Will you wear it? Will you be my wife, Sarah Mitchell, and help me raise my son and any other children we might be blessed with?" Tears sprang to Sarah's eyes as she nodded. "Yes. Yes. I will." He placed the necklace around her neck, his fingers lingering on her skin, then kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart soar. When they returned to camp, Tatanka announced their intention to marry. The celebration that followed was joyous and welcoming. Even those who'd been skeptical of Sarah's presence seemed to warm to the idea of their chief finding happiness again. They were married in a ceremony that blended both Kiowa traditions and some elements familiar to Sarah from her Christian upbringing. Makpia performed the ritual, calling upon the spirits to bless their union, while Sarah recited vows she'd written herself, promising to honor Tatanka, to care for his people, and to raise Kahana as her own son. As winter approached, Sarah found a deep contentment she'd never known in her previous life. She continued her medical practice, treating everything from common ailments to serious injuries. Her reputation as a healer spread to other tribes in the region. Some traveled days to seek her help. Tatanka supported her work completely, proud of his wife's skills and grateful for the lives she saved. Kahana called her mother in his first words, and Sarah's heart overflowed with love for the child she'd saved, and who had in turn saved her by bringing her to this life. She and Tatanka talked often about the future, about the challenges their people would face as white settlement continued to expand. But they faced those challenges together, determined to find ways to bridge the divide between their worlds. On a cold December evening, as snow began to fall softly over the plains, Sarah sat in their warm teepee with Tatanka and Kahana. The baby, now healthy and thriving at 6 months old, played contentedly with a carved wooden toy his father had made. Tatanka's arm was around Sarah, holding her close, and she felt the new life growing within her, their child, a bridge between two worlds, a symbol of hope and love. "Are you happy?" Tatanka asked softly, his breath warm against her hair. Sarah looked at their son, at the home they'd built together, at the life she'd chosen despite all the obstacles. She thought about the clinic full of people who trusted her, the tribe who had accepted her, and most of all, the man whose love had given her purpose and belonging she'd never found in her old world. "I am more than happy," she replied, turning to kiss him gently. "I am exactly where I belong. With you. With Kahana. With our people. This is home." And as the snow continued to fall outside, covering the Oklahoma plains in a blanket of white, Sarah knew that sometimes the most impossible choices lead to the most beautiful destinations. She had followed her heart into unknown territory. In doing so, she'd found not just a patient to heal, but a family to love, a community to serve, and a man whose broken heart had mended alongside his son's labored breathing. All because she'd been brave enough to take the risk. If you enjoyed this story of courage, love, and healing across impossible divides, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what you thought of Sarah and Tatanka's incredible journey. Should I tell more stories like this? Let me know.